Hey y'all, we're Brandon and Megan Giggling, and we give real talk and real solutions to help you get from where you are to where you want to be.
Whether you are on step 1 or years into your own personal growth journey, we've got the tools you need to level up.
So if you want to stop making excuses, start taking action, and grow into the person you are meant to be, then pop in your headphones and let's do this.
You ready?
This is the Fools in Love podcast. Oh, welcome back, y'all. Man, it is freezing. Can we just start right off by saying it is freezing in the studio right now?
Yes. Ooh, studio. I like that.
It is. It is our studio. Yeah, we got a new house not long ago, and we've been trying to set up this studio with my quotation marks. But my gosh, I don't know, y'all, like where you're at in the world, but we're in North Carolina. It's getting a little bit cooler outside. But that means that I'm freezing. I mean, yes. We're originally from Michigan, and I used to make fun of people that were like cold at 70 degrees. But I'm telling you right now, Meg's like wrapped up in a sweatshirt over here, and I'm freezing, and I'm shaking. But I'm gonna get through this for y'all because I love you, and I want to be there for you.
It has been tough. Our daughter's been complaining the past couple of days about the weather and why is it so cold. And I'm like, well, it's fall, and she's like, well, yeah, but last week it was fall too, and it wasn't freezing cold all the time. I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, you have a point, but
yeah, our kids have like no context. They're like, oh, well, it's not dark out. Like, you know, when the time changes or whatever, it's not dark out, so it's not bedtime. And then when it is dark out, we're like, it is bedtime. They still don't agree that it's bedtime. But I digress. So this week we're talking about our journey, and we're talking about our story, and we're talking about just being real with ourselves and being real with where we're at. And whether you feel like you've been there or not, I think y'all will be able to relate to this conversation. But recently, we've been asking a lot of big questions, and getting the chance to kind of get away, like we talked about in last week's episode in Miami, allowed us to start asking more questions. I was real over on Instagram recently that it kind of gave us more questions than answers. But I also feel like that's okay, because if that's where you're at in your journey, at least you're trying to progress to get the answers to those questions. And so one of the things we've really been struggling with personally and in our business is where to go from here. Because I feel like for the past several years, we've done the podcast, we've been on this journey. We came to a point where we're like, we need to more define what we want to do. We need to define our story. We need to define all these things. And one of the things Meg said when we were having this conversation was, well, we're still in process. I mean, we can't really define our story because we're not necessarily there yet. We're in our story. We're living our story. We're like to the point in our story where we're going to continue to go forward and go upward, but we're still in process. And then it kind of led us to thinking, well, then when do you share your story? Because if the story's not complete, is it valuable even though we're still in the struggle of every day to day?
And bigger than that for us came up like, well, are we frauds then? If, honestly, if the story's not yet written fully and we're not to the total other side, we can't look back and be like, this was the big defining moment in our business and this was the big defining moment in our lives and all these things, like we're not totally on the other side. We're still like in the hump of the story, if you will. Then is it just fraudulent? And who are we? And how do we deal with this? And, is this imposter syndrome or are we actually imposters? And we've just been kind of going through all that right now. And it just keeps coming up in conversation after conversation. And it's just been kind of weird because we don't usually have this many serious talks over the course of several weeks' time. But it's just been, it's been some emotion, it's been some anger, been some tears, been some stress. Just like, what are we doing professionally? What are we doing personally? Are we really growing? Like, what is the evidence of that growth? Like, it's just big. It's just heavy.
Yeah. And it's one of the things where we could have just had that conversation and not shared it with y'all. But the benefit of that is, I think if you've listened to us a time or two, you know what we're about, but also we want to be as open and transparent with everyone out there as possible, because my fear is always that they're going to look at our Instagram feed and be like, wow, they have it all figured out and they have it all together. They know what to do and they have every answer, and somehow I don't, because we can do that. And I do that. I admit, I look at other influencers, I look at people I look up to in the space, and I say they have it figured out, but I don't really factor in that they had their own journey and they're still writing their own story. For me, it came up, where do we want to go? Where do we see ourselves going? And how do we fully tell our story and allow people to know who we are and give them a look behind the curtain, if you will, while still being in the process of that story? And you brought it up a second ago. It almost feels like, I mean, talk about a gut check, but is this imposter syndrome or are we imposters? That's crazy. I mean, when you think about it, because those are real struggles that I have in my own mind. And I think about, is that just my inner voice trying to bring me down to a level? Or is that my inner voice looking itself in the mirror and saying, it's time to get real with yourself? Me and Meg, not 20 minutes ago, we're having a conversation about another situation completely. But we were saying, isn't it so easy to look at someone else or look at someone else's circumstance or look at what they're doing and pick out all the things that are wrong or all the things you could do to improve them and get them further down the road. If they would just listen to what you have to say, then blank, they would get that relationship they want. They would have that life they want. And this is people we know personally and some of y'all that have reached out to us. Like it's if anyone would just listen to what we're saying, then it would be helpful to them. Now, I don't mean to sound like pompous when I say that, but my point in saying that is it's easy for any of us out there to look at someone else's situation and where they're at on the surface level and say that we can help them and we have the answers if they would just listen to us. But my question to y'all today, because I asked this to Meg today, is how often are you doing that with yourself? How often are you looking in the mirror and speaking to yourself about you? Because it's a struggle for me, and I know I'm going on a tangent, but it is a struggle for me because I struggle with the fact of, is that my negative inner voice bringing me down to a level to try to keep me at that level? Or is that my big boy Brandon voice saying, step it up, man. You're not doing the things that you need to do, and being real with myself, not knocking myself down. And how do you differentiate between the two?
Well, I was going to say, earlier we were talking and you were saying, Meg, I think that, as much as I sound like I'm being rude to you, I'm not being rude to you. I'm kicking us both in the pants, right? You basically said, I believe that we need a kick in the pants. I believe that we need to start doing something differently. We need to do more. We need to move in a direction. And if I don't say this to both of us, then nothing will change. And that's totally true. And then you were mentioning that you also, on the flip side of that, worry that, if you push too hard, if you make us do, then, is there still room for grace? Is there still room for rest? Is there ever a time when we can say, okay, well, we failed at this, fail in quotations, of course, but we can get back up and try again? Or is it something else entirely? And I think that that's a really hard place to be in, where we're just kind of we know that we're in this moment of struggle, of needing to turn the page, of needing to get the next thing moving. And we're stuck in this weird place. How do we get through it? How do we make ourselves move in that direction while also still providing the ability to say, hey, this is a little bit too much. Where is that line?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think in those moments, you're right. If you want the real term I said, I'm not trying to be a dick.
Right.
But maybe we need someone to be a dick to us right now. Mm-hmm. Maybe we need that motivation right now. Do you ever just get frustrated with yourselves, y'all? Yeah. You're tired of the narrative that you're telling yourself. You know that there's things that you want to do and places that you should be in your mind, but somehow there's something preventing you. And most of that time it's you. And it's just so frustrating when that comes up, that if someone came to me, in this case, if I could split myself in two and Brandon came to me and was telling me what was going on, I feel like I could so much easier speak into Brandon's life to tell him what he needs than I can when it's in my own mind. And I always struggle with the fact of teetering on grace versus kicking the pants, Brandon. Motivational, let's get up and do this thing, and grace, it's okay. And that's a real balance I think we all have to grapple with, because we're all in process. We just all are in process. No one is ever at the mountaintop. Like even if you get there, then you're trying to do more, or you should be trying to like reach for more things or just better yourself in some way. It doesn't even need to be more, just be improving. But I feel like recently we've just needed that kick in the pants and we don't have anyone else to do it. That's the thing, y'all. Most of us, if we're being honest, we're waiting for someone else to give us the kick in the pants we need. And the reason we're doing that is because we've been conditioned for so long. You had a parent that was telling you what to do. Then you had teachers to tell you what to do. Then you had, professors to tell you what to do. Then you grow up and you have a 9 to 5 and you have a boss to tell you what to do. But what happens when you're trying to do your own thing? Who's then telling you what you need to do and not do?
Right. Or just like in a life perspective, who's to say what the next thing to work on is? Like, I believe that I've grown so much as far as confidence in the last several years. I've really, truly made huge strides in that area. Like just becoming confident in who I am and who I'm meant to be and the ability to ask for help and all those things. I think that's all played a huge part in confidence. And I've worked really hard on doing all of those things. And because of that, I've finally realized that it's okay to make my own decisions. I don't need somebody else to give me that permission to tell me the next move. And then on the flip side of that, because I don't need anybody to do it, sometimes it makes me not do it at all. Mm-hmm. And it's a kind of a icky place to be at sometimes.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when me and Meg, at least for us, when we have the conversation, a lot of times recently it comes off as me just being mean or upset at you when I'm talking in a general sense about both of us. And today we kind of clarified that with each other. I'm not trying to be mean to you. I'm not trying to be mean to Megan. I'm trying to be real with both of us because this is the struggle, y'all. I mean, coddling each other and saying, well, it's okay, while it's great, and it can be used a lot of the time to give yourself grace. Don't take it the wrong way. A lot of times you got to be real with you're in process. And even though you're in process, you still have value. There's still worth there. There's still a reason to share your story. Even if you don't have all the answers, even if you're not where you want to be, it's still okay. And it doesn't make you, I'm speaking to myself now, it doesn't make you a hypocrite. It doesn't make you, a bad person. It doesn't make you anything wrong with you because you're trying to figure it out. I think as long as we're clear with y'all and with ourselves that we are trying to figure it out and we don't know everything and we're looking for the answers and that's okay, I think that's a good place to be. Because if you're constantly looking to other people for the answer, then when are you ever looking at yourself to see if there's any validity to that or if that's the answer for you? Because someone else's answer, and they could tell me how to run my life, would I be happy? Would I be fulfilled at the end of it? I don't know, because I'm living their life then. I'm not actually doing my own thing. And that kind of leads us to another struggle we've had recently, which was, are my thoughts and the things that I'm doing and the things that I'm sharing on this podcast and the things that I'm putting out in the world, are they different enough? Are they really me, or am I just spewing out someone else's thoughts? Because that's a difficult thing, because we take on a lot of podcasts. I listen to podcasts every week. I read books every week. I listen to audiobooks. I do different things throughout the year, like go to conferences and whatever else. But how do I know how much of that is really like me saying something, or am I just regurgitating someone else's thoughts? I'll be real. I was watching a video about another influencer recently, and the critique on that influencer in particular, I started looking at myself under the same lens, and I'm like, am I just using the same things and saying the same things and doing the same things? And why am I doing that? Is it because someone else told me to do that? Or is it because it actually is helpful and it's something that did help me? And am I different enough? And if I'm not different enough, then why am I even sharing my story? Because my story is the same they could hear from the next person, the next person, the next person. So what differentiates me as a person? because I believe we're all built as individuals. We're all put on this earth for a reason, with our own gifts, with our own skills, with our own voice. So why then are we all trying to be like someone else and do what someone else does? And my fear is that that's what we've been doing, which is why we're pulling back the curtain and digging deep at why that is. And I don't have the answer yet.
Yeah. And it's so frustrating too, because like when you're talking about doing the things, I mean, those things really do work. Like, it's not like we haven't tried them. Like the things that other people say to do, the things that we tell you guys to do, the things that have made an impact in our lives, like that's the things we're sharing, but they're not original thoughts. And I know you guys know that. We've never been like, we are the ones who came up with gratitude journaling. Like, of course not. You guys know that.
Yeah. We're the ones who said to have a morning routine. We're the ones that said, have habits. We're the ones that said have small bite-sized goals so you can stack them up over time.
Right.
I mean,
right.
it's
of course not. Like, you know that. But then it's just so frustrating because but on the flip side, that's literally the changes that we made, and that's literally things that we do that have gotten to have gotten us to this point. Did it push us over the edge yet? No, but that's because sometimes we let off the gas a little bit too much. That's because sometimes other things happen. That's because we have not written the other side of the story yet. And again, no one has. Like, our story's not written until the day we die, but we feel like we're just in this like middle ground place where we're just trying to get to the other edge, and that's where the story will be. But really, the story is right here and right now. And it doesn't mean that just because we're saying things or repeating things that we've heard that they're not valuable. We're just in this place where we're like, yes, those things did add value, and yes, those things are super helpful. And also we got to figure out really what our story is, even if we're writing it, even if we wonder if it's really valid yet, there is validity in it. And we're just trying to go through all that. And it's just so confusing, and it's taking up a bunch of our time to have these conversations and feel like we're just spinning our wheels and never really getting anywhere. And at the end of every conversation, we're like, we just have to do something. Mm-hmm. That's how every one of them ends. We just have to do something. What we're doing is not working. We just feel stuck. We're not sure which direction to go yet. The thing is, it doesn't matter which direction we go next. We have to pick a direction and try it. And that's what we realize that is the missing link. That's the missing part. When we get afraid, when we don't know, we just kind of sit paralyzed. Instead of going any direction and seeing if that's the right direction. You can always turn around. When you're driving a car, if you go the wrong direction, you turn that sucker around and go to the right street. It's the same thing in life. And for some reason, for us, it's a really hard thing to actually follow that and be like, it's okay if we get it wrong. It's okay if we go the wrong direction for a minute. Let's try something.
Right. And I think like what I hear you saying and what I've kind of been reflecting on is really embracing the journey for what it is. Because none of us like it. We've talked recently a ton about like the struggle and how we're all in like this discomfort. And it's just so easy to say, well, that's just what you have to do. But if I'm trying to reflect on my own life, I don't want it. Like, I don't want the struggle. I don't want to go through this part of my journey. This chapter in my life sucks. Like, I want to move on. I want to, let's flip to the end and get to where we did figure it out. And we're like, super successful in whatever it is that we want to do by our own standard, not by the world's standard, by our own standard. And we're fulfilled and we're joyful every day and we're doing those things. But we say it all the time. And I just needed it to sink in my own heart that this is it. This is life. This is your journey. And what you do with these little breadcrumbs along the way and how you figure it out and the things you try that maybe you don't succeed at. And all of those things lead you to where you're meant to be. I freaking said it on this podcast a few weeks ago. The battles are what are preparing you for the battle ahead. Like all the things that you're struggling with, prepare you for the battle ahead. And it's so easy to say those words, but then when you get out into the world, I just want it to not be. I don't want to be in this place. I want to have a clear direction. But the clear direction, it doesn't exist without moving. And that's what you're saying. Like, that's where our conversation was. You have to move. You have to take a step and then another and another. And I know that. And while I say it, and I know y'all are hearing it out there too, but it doesn't make it any easier when you're stepping and you step in something and you're like, oh, that's not what I wanted. That's not how I saw this going. But how do you get there? How do you say, well, this is part of it, so I'm good, without giving yourself the break, like, oh, well, this is just part of the journey. I guess this will just build me into the person I'm supposed to be. But then also taking action and steps forward at the same time, because that's That's the struggle, right? That is it.
Yeah. And another thing we've been kind of just talking about, worrying about, ruminating about is just like, what if we get to the other side and it's not what we thought it would be? What if we get to the other side, the story's written, everything's successful, it's exactly what we wanted, it's exactly what we saw life being, and we still feel the same? What if nothing changes even though everything changed? And I think that where we get hung up on that is like, we're like, well, if that could be, then we're stopping in our fear and not trying anything, rather than being like, here's the truth of it. That could happen. We could get to the other side, think we've written the story, and be like, oh, that's it? I don't feel any different. Nothing's changed for me. And if that's true, then you can just continue the dang story. Like, your journey doesn't have to end there, but we act like it does. And I don't know if you guys do too, but we sure do. We act like that's the end all be all. So dang it, let's not even try, because if that was true, what would we do from there? Like, basically, we might as well go die, because that's it. That's all we got. We can only try one thing. And if that ain't it, baby, it's over.
Right. And that's the thing too. That's the way we look at our lives. You get to, the mountaintop, the perceived mountaintop of your life. And then like people lose their job, or they lose whatever opportunity is, or it doesn't fulfill them in the way they thought they'd fulfill. But then the only thing you do is you pick back up the book and you realize, oh, dang, I'm only halfway through this thing. Like, I got a lot more chapters to write, a lot more chapters to do. But like, if you're like, well, I'm not there, or what if I get there? And the issue with speaking into that, what if I get there and I don't feel fulfilled? Because that's a true fear in my life. Like, I get there, I'm going to feel the same way, because I'll still be there. If I don't change and adapt and be different.
You personally will still be in that
I
situation.
will be there. And that's a real fear for me. But then I couple that fear with the fact that I only really know my own experience so far. I don't know what it would be like to be there, because I'm not there. So I can only perceive what it might be like to be there. I don't really know. And I can only do it based off my former conditioning, which my former conditioning tells me I'm going to graduate college, I'm going to get married, I'm going to get a job, and I'm going to work 40, 50 years, and I'm going to retire, and I'm going to be happy in my house. And I got to that place in my life, and I was freaking miserable, and I was unhappy. So why do I think that maybe I'd get to the further thing down the road and I would still be unhappy? Because my previous conditioning tells me that's what's going to happen. The only issue with all of it is I have no idea, because I'm not there yet. My story's still being written. And unless I, as our friends at Story and Growth say, put down the pen and stop writing, then the story has to keep being written. And I have to keep changing and growing and going through these battles and going through these things to get to where I want to be. But y'all, you need to realize every day, your story is being written. Your journey is this. This is the journey. This is life. You don't have to wait for it to happen, because it's happening every day. Every night, the moon comes out, and every morning the sun rises, and that's a new day, and that's a new path in your journey, and that's a new day that you get to write your own story. But how well are you doing that? And are you so worried about the expectation of the future and where you should be that you're allowing it to control your current circumstance and where you're currently going and the actions you're currently taking today? Because that's honestly where we're at.
Yeah. Guys, let's make a pact. Like, let's all just make a pact right here and right now that we will not let the fear, not let the anxiety, not let the worry about what may happen stop us from even trying the thing. Let's make a pact that we're not going to let all that crap get in the way, and instead we're going to just go after it. We're going to keep writing the story. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep pursuing the journey, because no matter what's on the other side, that'll be growth. No matter what is on the other side, that'll be growth. And we just have to keep that in mind. We have to make a decision today to pick a dang direction, follow that direction, see what's on the other side of that. And if it's not right, turn back around. Let's try again. If it is right, let's continue on and go higher and go more and go harder.
That's right. If you decide to do that with us, if you decide to take on this challenge, just go over to our Instagram at The Fools in Love. Just DM us and just say, I'm in. Just say, I'm in. Own it. If you feel it right now that you want to take on this path, that you want to take on this journey, just say, I'm in. And it's not going to be us bothering you. All we'll do is encourage you. I'm not going to try to sell you anything, I promise. All I want to know is that you're in, because saying that out loud, saying that to yourself and then saying that to another person is a lot different. If you say, I'm in, you will know that you're part of this tribe, that you're in it with us, that we're not going to give up, that when we run into obstacles, we're going to carry on and we're going to figure this out together. We love y'all. We'll see you next week. Thank y'all so much for listening.
Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode.
And if you want to be our BFFs, leave us a review. It helps more people find the show and allows us to share our message with the world.
We love y'all.